So the last stop on this system is the 20-inch resin chamber. Now this is the final step, meaning the final layer of filtration, which could also be bypassed as noted earlier. You'll want to change your resin chamber anytime you see that your ppm is consistently going over 10. It's a good time to change your resin at that point. So we're going to go ahead and show you how you do that. So the resin chamber, unlike the pre-filter housings, is right side up, which means when you're going to loosen the housing, you're going to go ahead and take your filter wrench and you're going to move it clockwise, like the direction of a clock. This will allow the housing to become loose. Simply loosen the housing from the cap, and you're going to see some water. So you'll notice with the DI cap, the O-ring was facing upward, much like your RO membrane. So when you replace this cartridge, first of all, placement is key. Now I have a dry example for us. So we're going to put this to the side. So when you're replacing the cartridge itself, you'll want to make sure that this O-ring gets some lubricant. So we're going to go ahead and do that right now real quick. Doesn't have to be overkill, just helps with the seal. And then you'll notice on the opposite end, there's a small hole here, which that aligns with the notch inside of the housing. You want to make sure, especially with the 20-inch housing, that you take care in placing this. Placement is key. It is a big housing. And if you notice, I can wiggle this housing around while it is loose. So you want to make sure, A, it's making a good seal at the bottom, but also B, it's making a good seal on top. So with your O-ring on top, I personally recommend when changing, guide the filter. Work slowly. Find your threadings on the cap. Find your threads. And then slowly hand tighten. The less wiggle, the better. Because most importantly, you want to make sure that this O-ring properly seals. Because the second you get a rough seal, you run into issues with TDS and or flow. So we'll get our housing hand tight. And that's how you change your resin cartridge. But we're going to talk a little bit more about the resin cartridge itself. So while we offer pre-filled resin cartridges that you could purchase for refilling your resin, we also offer empty housings and loose resin that you can fill yourself. So if you find that you are one who likes to refill the cartridge yourself, it's important to note you want to really pack in that resin. So I'm going to show you a pre-filled cartridge here to kind of give you an idea. Resin can get very messy, so I'm just carefully opening this. So if you look inside this chamber, you'll notice the resin level is really hitting the first thread. It's really packed in there. When we fill it in-house, we usually pack down the housing itself, or the cartridge. You'll pack down the cartridge to really pack in that resin sand. You want to overfill this cartridge for maximum performance. If you find that you just replaced your resin chamber and for some reason you're still getting 30, 40 TDS out of your system, but you don't know what to do, you've already changed your filters, well, take a look at your resin level. 9 times out of 10, it just needs a little bit more resin. It needs to be packed properly, or it's just not placed properly. So now we know we have a tight amount of resin in here. You'll also want to make sure that you have this donut styled filter on the top of the cap, and there's one at the bottom already set in place. So we're going to go ahead, tightly pack, tightly close it, and if you want to make sure you have enough in there, give it a shake. Give it a couple taps. Whoop. Keep an eye out for your O-ring. But if you give it a couple taps and a shake, and you can't feel or hear the resin moving around, you know you got it packed tight enough. So once again, lubricate your seals, make sure your O-ring is upwards, and you're good to replace your resin chamber. Remember to take care and work slowly when reattaching your housing.